my brother's best friend, as they just came off of high school graduation, was murdered in a really gruesome and grisly way. There was a possibility that all of the evidence that was developed, which was compelling, would be withheld from court. And as a 14-year-old at the time, I just thought this was crazy. So I switched gears and said, I'm going to be an attorney.
Welcome to Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm your host, Denisa Tova, and today's guest is a powerhouse. She's a pioneer in family law. She's a fierce advocate for survivors. She's a self-made woman who built not just a law firm, but also a legacy. Debra Whitson is the founder and managing attorney of Whitson Law PLLC, and she's also the visionary behind Mediated Online Solutions, with 5 offices, a best-selling book, and a spot as #1 on the top 10 self-made women of 2025. She does it all. I know her a little bit professionally, and I cannot dive in behind and beyond her title to find out who she really is. Debra, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Denisa, and what an introduction. I don't recognize myself in the things that you just said.
Yes. Well, that is you. And more importantly, I am interested in hearing your story. Tell me your story. How did you get here?
Yeah, it's a winding road to where I got here, or how I got here. But when I was an early teen, I wanted to be an author. I like to tell stories and read stories and write stories. And so I would tell everybody who listened that that was going to be my adult career. And then a very tragic event hit our local community in our school. My brother's best friend, as they just came off of high school graduation, was murdered in a really gruesome and grisly way. And so our little town was fixated on the processing of the criminal case. And without going into legal details, there was a potential that because of a unique circumstance and how the defendant came on the police radar and was eventually charged, there was a possibility that all of the evidence that was developed, which was compelling, would be withheld from court. It would not be admissible in court. And as a 14-year-old at the time, I just thought this was crazy. I thought this was insanity, and it was going to be complete injustice if this gentleman got away with what he did to someone we loved in our community and our school. So I switched gears and said, I'm going to be an attorney. I'm specifically going to be a criminal prosecutor because I saw the system as broken and I was going to fix it. At the time, I didn't realize, that it's not just nuance, that we have a lot of protections in our law for accused individuals. So, but in that moment of grief and loss, I saw a broken system that I was going to fix. So I did that. I went to law school. I became a prosecutor. I did that for 11 years. I specialized in special victims prosecutions. I worked with a lot of victims of domestic and sexual violence, or child victims who were victims of physical or sexual violence. And it was incredibly gratifying. And while I didn't fix a broken system, I think I made a difference in the community where I was prosecuting, especially by becoming really expert in working with victims of violence. And I took that to the road, and I began to train judges and police officers and emergency first responders on how to respond to, react, and collect evidence on behalf of victims that they were engaging with. So I politicized myself out of that career. I ran for district attorney in my local community and didn't win. And so I had to repurpose myself at that point. And since I had a calling for working with victims of domestic and sexual violence, the closest civil area of law that was analogous to the work that I had been doing as a prosecutor was to go into family law. And I also, at the same time, became trained to become what we say in New York as attorney for child, known as guardian ad litem or law guardian in most other jurisdictions. So I did that work for a while, which was very fulfilling. And And I mentored originally under a very seasoned male divorce attorney who was solo. And I entered the world of family and matrimonial law at a time when New York, being the last holdout on the 50 states, we still had to have grounds for divorce. And so that was a time that was very ugly for litigants, because the most common ground was cruel and inhumane treatment. So your first meeting with the client was like, tell me what small grievances have accumulated over the years of your marriage that we can turn into cruel and inhumane treatment. And you had to bring the pleadings out of the gate in a really ugly and unpleasant and adversarial way. And I thought that was so harmful for individuals, but it really broke my heart that it was so harmful for kids, dragged into the middle of that. And I became passionate about finding a better way. And so I left the mentorship with this senior level attorney. I launched my own firm. I became trained as a mediator. I found my way to collaborative divorce. I didn't know that was a model at the time. And I just thought, why would anybody do it any other way? Why throw gasoline on a fire and draw kids into warfare? It made no sense to me, and I knew there had to be a better way. So now I'm fixing the way people experience their breakups and their divorces by offering them better paths to resolving their legal matters. So I guess, I don't know, underneath it all, when I see something that isn't working, I'm really just compelled to be a problem solver and think out of the box and find different and better ways to approach problem solving for myself in my life and for my clients and my law firm and my mediation company.
Wow, what a person you are. It's you know, you are a doer, and it started, I mean, at 20 when you were 14 years old. I can't even imagine what that was like experiencing it. And do you feel when you can, and I'm not trying to get you to relive the gruesome memories and the heaviness of all of that and the grief, but do you feel, you are aligned exactly with, with what you're doing today? You aligned with what you were meant to do. Do you still feel the same?
Yeah, I do. And it's interesting because I started out wanting to be a storyteller, and I actually sit with my clients. And if they can't avoid court, unfortunately, New York doesn't make a mandatory diversion to alternative dispute resolution in any family or matrimonial law cases. So we haven't embraced that. I don't know why we're the last in sort of revolutionizing how we approach family or working with families and family law. But um, if we have to go off to court with the clients, we always tell them that we are not going to throw gasoline on the fire. We will defend you if someone is trying to take shots at you, but we won't throw gasoline on the fire. But I tell them I'm a paid storyteller. I want the judge who's going to handle their case until hopefully they settle it on their own. I mean, with help from the professionals, but that I want the judge to know them and know them through story, because right before we had written words, written language, we were storytellers as tribal people. And it's just in our DNA, right? It's evolutionarily how we communicated and related to each other. And so I enjoy that I get to tell stories and help people through the storytelling and help them feel heard, because I'm telling their story by getting to know them genuinely, who they are. And along this journey professionally that I've been on, I've been very influenced by Simon Sinek's Start With Why and the follow-on books. And so, my why is to make sense of the complicated and find better ways to do things. And I think I am living in alignment with my why. And Simon didn't make my why. He just helped me understand that I really am driven to do what I'm doing because of who I am fundamentally at the core, and that is a problem solver who wants to find better ways to do things.
And you just hit a nail on the head. That's the purpose. I love him. And
Mm.
it's a really profound question. And until I answer that for myself, which is essentially same thing, simplifying, right? Making sense of the complicated.
Yes.
Uh, and really, it doesn't matter whether well, it matters obviously when you're dealing with parenting issues and children. I mean, rather than assets, but still there is just the brain is so foggy when you're going through that transition. It's filled with emotions and fear. And then when you have to fill it with other stuff, it's great if you are surrounded by professionals who help break that down and make sense of all of that. So I love what you said. You know, the other reason why it resonated with me about being a storyteller, because I used to tell my clients back in as a financial mediator, look, when you're in front of a judge, if you take a big piece of paper, like 8.5 by 11, and that's your story, if you were to fit your story in a piece of paper, and then the more hands that touch that paper will, and you fold it each time somebody touches it. It'll be your attorney, you know, and eventually a professional, then eventually a judge. So by the time it gets to the judge, the story that was initially laid out on the big piece of paper now has been folded maybe 10 times. And now judge has to make a decision based on a fraction of your story that is going to impact you for the rest of your life. So that is so wonderful. What you're saying is you're like a conduit, so that they are heard and judge can make an informed decision.
Yeah, and even though I no longer serve in the role of attorney for child, I feel that if the judge is going to be making the decision about custody and parenting, that it's my duty to make sure that the judge understands who these children are. And I tell my clients to try to avoid letting judge make decisions about something as important to you as your children if you can. Because the judge will never know the children the way you do. They will never know your child's strengths and challenges and vulnerabilities the way that you do. And so I don't think judges set out to do harm or to intentionally impose something that isn't best for each and every child touched by that decision. But there's just no way. I mean, I don't envy judges making those decisions. Making decisions for children is, I don't know, I really couldn't do it. I've been tapped a lot of times over the years, like, why don't you run for the judge? Why don't you run for judge? I just don't think I have it in me to make those decisions for people. I'm really much happier on the other side of the bench trying to steer people away from letting the jurist make the decision.
You know, and you strike me as a doer. What, when you're assembling your team, what are some of the qualities, you know, you've done a lot of growth, I'm sure, through this work and learned a lot about yourself. So when you're assembling your team, what are some things you know that you will not tolerate, that will make a good fit? I mean, what are you looking for these days in someone primarily?
Yeah, I didn't start out this way, but because I understand that my origin story, what drew me into the work that I do, and my why, I will often have people take the why discovery tool when they're at the right stage of vetting as a candidate for a role, especially an important role like management in the firm or attorneys, or we have client concierges in the firm who are trained to deal with our clients, but they're not lawyers, so they're the air traffic controllers for how the client is working with our office and the system, right? They're helping the client navigate their life as they're going through this transition. So I want to make sure those people are in alignment with the firm's mission, vision, and values, and that I understand their why, so I can make use of their innate skills and assign them work or hire them for work that is in alignment with their own why. So I really do. I mean, Simon Sinek has changed the way I live my life, and that certainly has changed the way I run my businesses. But fundamentally, I'm a lifelong learner. I want to be better tomorrow than I am today, and I'm not comparing myself against anybody but me. So I'm not chasing someone else's dream. I'm not trying to keep up with someone else or surpass someone else. I want to do better tomorrow than I am today, and I am the only measuring stick that I'm measuring against. So I want people who are innately driven to grow and improve. I specifically ask in the interview stage of vetting new hires, the role that you're considering is this, but if you get hired by this company, like, where do you see yourself going and what do you want to grow into? Because I never imagine that somebody's going to stay in the same role forever. And so it's like, from the get-go, I want to know what are their personal, professional, and financial goals. But I really try to hire mature, self-motivated, self-directed individuals, so I'm not a babysitter, or I don't have to hire managers who are babysitters. I think I've done a pretty good job of, with the team that I have assembled over the years. People stay with me a long time, and it's because it's mutually fulfilling, which is great for everyone.
Same. I'm always brutally honest. I say, let me tell you why this wouldn't work. Let me get that out of the way. And I know that about myself. And I say, it's gonna sound harsh, but I don't do well with babysitting.
Mhm.
And between you and me, it's probably between you and me and everybody else who's listening is, um, I can be empathetic and compassionate and all that, but when it comes, I think, to assembling a team, someone who needs a lot of structure, someone who is very, I don't say needy, just has a need for a lot of instruction, a lot of
Mhm.
structure. I don't do well. So they would be great in maybe working with somebody else. But as far as, self-driven, you don't need, the rah-rah sort of a leadership to get you going. It's
Mhm.
you want to better yourself.
Right.
So, and it shows. I met your team virtually, and it really shows that you've assembled, you really have a great team that's in alignment.
Thank you. I think the other thing is when you are working with people who, by the nature of the work, are bound to have a fair amount of drama in their life, right at that stage of their transition, whatever their legal matter is, even if they're coming to us for a prenuptial because they're, excited about starting a new life together with someone that they love. There's, stress and drama that goes involved in that process too. So we are definitely the no drama zone internally. We support each other. We find ways to laugh, ways to cheer each other on, and congratulate each other. But there's really not a place for internal drama. Um, it would be too much for all of us.
No, well, that is an excellent point. And how do you create sort of the same environment outside of work? How do you spend time outside of your, I guess, quote unquote, office, if you will?
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know. I'm in my 60s now. So over the years, I have found that I need fewer relationships, but deep relationships. So they going out with a gaggle of women for a ladies' night out with 7 or 10 people, not my vibe anymore. So I want to have deep connections with people. So I have a handful of close friends. I have a devoted husband, and we have kids, and I have stepchildren through my husband from his first marriage. And now we have grandchildren. So that's a huge focus. It's just focusing on those key personal relationships that I have in my life. But I don't do a lot of, flitting around like a social butterfly, like I used to maybe in my 20s. And we are food lovers, all of us in my family. We love to cook. We love to eat. So no matter how busy our day has been, all of us, when we come together, we are cooking together, we're sitting down, no cell phones, and dinner lasts an hour and a half or 2 hours because we're talking and catching up and connecting after our day. So that's a priority. I can't say that I always have good work-life balance, but no matter how many hours I work during the week, we have meal times together. Now the children are kind of flown, so it's mostly me and my husband at the dinner table, but whenever they're around and visiting, it's, mealtime. I play a lot of tennis. That's sort of my physical outlet. It's a fun mental game as well, but so it takes my mind off of anything that might be lingering in my mind about work, so I can really just focus on where that ball is coming at me from and where I want to hit it next, and move my body around as well. And then I have a dog, and she is my love, and she gets me outdoors 3 or 4 times a day. And I have a home in the Adirondack Mountains, so it's nature. No matter if it's warm or cold, it's just lovely to be out with her, walking and with the mountains around us, and rivers and streams right through our backyard, and that kind of thing. So nature, getting out into nature with her um, is a nice break from the busyness of my life.
Yeah, that sounds so peaceful. I can feel it. It's interesting what you said about the depth of relationships. That's one of the reasons why I personally find the group networking events tiring.
Mhm.
I do not know how to
Yeah.
have the superficial
Yeah.
conversation, when it's really loud and like you just seek like more of an intimate conversations and fewer the better. And deeper. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what what makes you really laugh? Like really laugh genuinely.
Oh my God. My husband and the two sons who we raised together, all just have a very fun sense of humor. And there's always banter, especially when we're cooking together in the kitchen. There's playful banter. And when we travel together, there is usually times where all four of us are just in tears laughing so hard. I don't know, it's fun, but it's just life and finding moments in life that we can be playful and playfully tease each other in a way that's not harmful or mean, that kind of thing. So that I love. Um, there's certain shows that I'm drawn to. I watched both seasons of Bad Sisters, and I just thought that was brilliantly hilarious and dark and but wonderful and all at the same time. I find things like that, and I think I was an OG Saturday Night Live fan back when they started in the '70s, and um, yeah, I follow that still, and some seasons are better than others, and some cast members are funnier than others, but that's a big draw for me as well. Just I grew up on the Saturday Night Live
Oh, did
program.
you?
Yeah, I did.
Oh my gosh. I noticed too, as far as your team, they all have, I think, the same certification, right? Is it like a divorce specialist? What is it? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so during the pandemic, when we all got locked in our homes or our home offices and we're on Zoom 24/7, the National Association of Divorce Professionals, an email hit my inbox, and maybe they had been emailing me before and I didn't notice it, but announcing this certified divorce specialist training. And so, when we weren't crazy busy serving clients because we were retooling how we were doing business, a lot of attorneys did CLE. I don't know if you did it, did CLE or found programs to do self-development or professional development. So I looked into it and I took it myself, and I was floored. At that point, I'd been practicing more than 25 years and working a lot with victims and learning to understand their trauma and how to be um, sensitive to working with them given their trauma. But the Certified Divorce Specialist training has a component of neuro-linguistic programming theories and practices that teaches you to be aware of when you're speaking to somebody or communicating with somebody, what their primary mode of communicating and receiving information is. But when we're stressed, so all of us use all three modes. So some of us learn by doing, moving, that's kinetic. Others want to hear it and others want to see it. So if you, like me, I write notes down still old school style because that's kinetic. But we use all those modalities, but when we're stressed, we tend to default to our primary mode. And it trained me to listen for that when I was talking to people. So if I had somebody that I knew was kinetic and they were on Zoom, I was like, grab your notepad and I'll mention things that you might want to jot down so that you can refer back to it later. But we always send now our clients any key messages. It's verbal. We've talked about it. It's in an email and follow up so they can read it by sight. And we'll send them some video or some exercise or something that they could do, some paper to fill out for us. So we're tapping all of those modes of communication. So when they're under stress, if they're defaulting to their rudimentary mode and we miss that, we might not have been as effective in our communication. So that's a big part of it. The other part of this certified divorce specialist training program is it brings together allied professionals supporting people going through divorce. So folks like you who came out of financial advising and management, now you're doing your Quadro work, and maybe mortgage brokers or financial aid advisors or career coaches or parenting coaches or therapists, all of the kind of people who might be supporting people going through divorce or life transitions. together so that we all have an understanding of how to consider our clients' needs in a more broad and holistic way. So at my firm now, because of the CDS program, we don't just say, here's names of 3 realtors you need if you need to sell the marital residence, or here's names of 3 financial advisors. We have vetted professionals, and we create a referral relationship with them. So we know that they're ready to take divorcing clients. We know that if they take them from us, they're going to get white glove treatment because we have this special relationship that we've developed. And we know their services are quality. So whether you need a plumber or a fashion coach because you're going back to work after being a stay-at-home mom because of the divorce or whatever, we're going to hook you up with somebody that our team has dealt with personally and we know. And so we don't just send them, we'll go find a plumber or go find your divorce coach or your divorce coach. We will connect them so that they don't have to be in already a state of overwhelm. They don't have to be like doing it themselves or finding good professionals themselves. And what we learned before we started doing this with them and for them is we could give them those referrals, suggest you should get this person in your corner. And 90% of the time they were too overwhelmed to do it and follow through. So if we make that warm connection and make sure that they're getting actually connected to the people that they need services from, then we're taking one more thing off their plate when they're already in a state of overwhelm and stress.
You're creating this sounds sort of counterintuitive and strange, but it's sort of you're making divorce hurt less and allowing them to heal faster is if I was to say it simply, since we're simplifying things, because well, who wants to remember? I mean, you're making yourselves memorable without even the intention of it being that, just giving, and creating so much value and making them part of a community. And also I see in a process, you are having a team that's sort of aligned and is able to communicate in the same way and constantly just deliver value and be helpful. I think that's, I am in awe and I aspire to do the same and sort of in our world too. I think that's so important. And sometimes, when I speak to other professionals, it feels so transactional, and it isn't. It's a real thing. It's a real fear and transition. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody dealing with a professional wants to feel like they're special and they're heard and they're valued,
Yeah.
but even more so when you're vulnerable and stressed and you're grieving or your life is just uncertain and you're not sure what the future is post-divorce. What is it going to look like for you? It can be very, making people feel very untethered and uncertain about what's to come. So, we just want to try to make the path to whatever their next chapter is faster, right? So the modalities we steer them to are more efficient and fast. Staying mired down in a legal battle for 2 or 3 years to get to the other side of your divorce, in my mind, is crazy. So we try not to have people go down that path. But we want to get them to their new happy ending, their new chapter of life, their new beginning, faster and more efficiently, and with more support along the way, if we can.
Wow, great. This is terrific. It's totally resonate. And I know we can continue and chat, but I'm curious as far as a parting thought message to incoming professionals. What would you give them?
To incoming professionals into the field,
Yes.
well, I guess I would first say, because I don't think that many newly graduating attorneys are going, I want to be a divorce attorney. So I think I know from experience that when I'm in a mixed group of attorneys and they say, what area of law do you practice? And I say matrimony and family law, they groan. And if my husband's by my side, he's like, is your job really that terrible? Because every time you mention what you do, people are like, oh God, really? You do that? I'm so sorry to hear that. And I want to change that for professionals because it can be very rewarding. I mean, now that we're past grounds for divorce in New York and we have no fault divorce, because that was pretty miserable, and I wondered whether I would stay in family law, and then finally New York got their act together and passed the no-fault statute. But I think this can be very, very rewarding, and it's just how I'm wired. The areas of law are very different. I would die on the vine if I was doing transactional law, like business and corporations or real estate transactions or whatever. I would just die on the vine. I would wilt. It would be, it's just not for me. And I would love for more up and coming new attorneys to take a look at this and understand that it can be different and it can be better and it can be very rewarding to support somebody through a very difficult time in their life and have them say, I'm so glad you were in my corner. I don't know, how I would have gotten to where I am if I didn't have all the supports and help that you gave. I mean, there's nothing more rewarding than that. For us, it's like I tell the clients, you don't want to go the long bitter battle because that's going to help me put my kids through college, but I would really want you to put your kids through college. And so let's be level-headed about this and not, empty out your 401k or put you in a situation where you can't fund their 529 accounts like you would want to. So let's get strategic and settle this. Custody is nuanced, but the divorce is math.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
it's math. It's one pot of resources divided up in
That's it.
between two people. It's math. So making it any more uncomfortable or complicated than it needs to be doesn't make any sense. It's diminishing returns. Every minute they're litigating or using their lawyers to argue over their positions, they're losing value.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said about where you really are funding the lawyers' college education, and you're losing the sense of yourself. The longer you're prolonging it, the longer it takes, and children in the middle. So, what a great reminder. What I just encouraging incoming attorneys to look at it through another lens. And I think certainly talking to someone like you who have a very different perspective would be very helpful. So I hope many of them do tune in. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for, leading today with your wisdom and just authenticity, great energy. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having me, and my team and I have really enjoyed working with your organization as well. We've helped a few customers since you and I have been your clients since you and I have become connected, so we do value you, and you're our go-to resource now for all of our quadro and retirement pension plan division issues. So thank you for the work that you do and for teaching lawyers, because that's how we first became acquainted.
Thank you very much. That is my why. That part of it. Thank you. And for all of you listeners and viewers, well, there's a bio link below to find out how to get in touch with Debra Whitson and her great work and her great team. And until next time, make sure to stay curious and stay inspired.